The first thing I remember wasn't the pain, it was the sound. A chair scraping back too fast, a glass tipping over, and then silence. The kind that presses on your chest. One minute I was sitting at the dining table, hands folded around a mug that had already gone cold. The next, my body was on the floor, my hips screaming, my palms burning against hardwood that had seen 40 years of my life. Nobody rushed to me, nobody said my name, they just stared. I'm Loretta Mayfield, 68 years old, born and raised on the south side of a small Georgia town most folks pass through without noticing. And right there on that floor, with the smell of collard greens still hanging in the air, I realized something ugly and permanent. I was no longer safe in my own home. My daughter-in-law stood over me, not shocked, not scared, calm, too calm, like this moment had been rehearsed in her head long before it ever happened. "You need to leave," she said, no shaking. No apology. I tried to speak, but my throat wouldn't work yet. "This house ain't yours anymore," she added, loud enough for everyone to hear, "and you've been here long enough." I looked toward my son, my only child. The boy I raised after his father passed. The boy whose shoes I bought before I paid the light bill. The boy who used to sleep with his head on my chest when storms scared him. He didn't look back. He kept his eyes on his plate. Fork moving, chewing like I wasn't lying 10 feet away on the floor. That's when it hit. Not the fall, the betrayal. I didn't cry, not yet. My body went cold instead, real still. Like something inside me locked itself up for protection. I pushed myself up slowly. My knees shook, but I stood anyway. Pride can be a dangerous thing, but sometimes it's the only thing keeping you upright. I brushed my dress smooth. Then I said one word, "All right," not because I agreed, because I understood. I walked down the hallway without looking back, every step heavy, every memory screaming from the walls. I closed my bedroom door gently, like I wasn't trying to wake the dead. And that's when I knew that night wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of a fight nobody saw coming. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. Didn't turn on the light, didn't move, just listened to the muffled sound of laughter coming from the dining room, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just been erased in front of a full table. My room looked the same as it always had. Lavender curtains, old oak dresser, photos lining the wall, snapshots of a life that felt farther away than it should have. There was one picture I stared at the longest. My son at 7 years old, gap-toothed grin, knees scraped up. His arm wrapped around my waist like I was the whole world. I used to be. I thought back to the woman I was before tonight. The woman who worked 2 jobs after her husband died suddenly at 45. The woman who learned how to stretch a dollar so thin it almost disappeared. The woman who never asked for help because Black women weren't taught to fall apart out loud. I kept this house when everyone told me to sell it. I paid it off, I fixed it. I protected it, not for me, for him. When my son brought Marissa home 3 years ago, I tried. Lord knows I tried, smiled through the side comments, ignored the look she gave the furniture. The questions about property taxes, about future plans. I told myself she just talked different, but little by little, things shifted. She started calling it their house, started rearranging things without asking. Started talking about downsizing like I wasn't sitting right there. And my son, he stopped defending me. That's the part that hurts worse than the shove, not that she pushed me, that he let her. I opened my nightstand drawer and pulled out a folded card I'd almost forgotten about. I'd kept it tucked there like a secret I hoped I'd never need. A lawyer's name, given to me by a church friend months back. "Just in case," she said. I stared at the card, then I picked up my phone. My hands shook, but my voice didn't when the line connected. "Hello," a man answered. I took a breath. "My name is Loretta Mayfield," I said. "And I think my family just tried to take my life apart." There was a pause, then he said something that changed everything. "Ma'am, you did the right thing by calling." And for the first time that night, I didn't feel invisible anymore. The man on the phone didn't rush me. That alone felt strange. I was used to explaining myself fast, like if I didn't, somebody might decide my pain wasn't important enough to keep listening. But he let the silence breathe. "Take your time," he said. "Tell me what happened." So I did. I told him about the dinner, about the push, about the way my son stared at his plate like I wasn't his mother. I told him about the house. How my late husband and I bought it when the paint was peeling and the porch sagged. How I paid every bill myself after the funeral. How my name and only my name was on those papers. When I finished, my chest felt lighter. Like I'd finally set something heavy down. Miss Mayfield, he said carefully, what you're describing is elder abuse. The words landed hard, elder abuse. I'd heard it on the news, on TV shows, never thought it would wear my face. He explained my rights without talking down to me, told me I wasn't crazy, told me the law didn't disappear just because the people hurting me shared my last name. Then he said something that flipped a switch in my spirit. You need to leave that house tonight, quietly and safely. For a moment, fear crept in. That house was everything I knew. 40 years of life sat inside those walls, but fear didn't get the final word. I can do that, I said. He told me what to pack: clothes, medications, documents, anything that proved the house was mine. And Miss Mayfield, he added, don't tell them where you're going. I hung up and stood there, heart pounding, listening to laughter float down the hallway. They thought they'd won. I rolled my suitcase out from the closet like I was heading on a short trip. Pack steady, no tears, just focus. When I slipped out the back door, the night air wrapped around me like a warning and a blessing all at once. I didn't look back because some doors don't deserve a goodbye. My friend Evelyn opened her door before I even knocked. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside without a word. You okay? She asked softly. I nodded, but it wasn't the truth. Safe doesn't always feel safe right away. Sometimes it just feels quiet enough for the shock to catch up. I sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, and told her everything. My voice cracked once, that was all. Evelyn didn't interrupt, didn't give advice I didn't ask for, just listened. That boy lost his mind, she said finally, but you didn't lose yours. Later that night, I called the lawyer back. He'd already started moving, papers, orders, protection I didn't even know existed an hour earlier. Tomorrow, he said, things will look different. But that night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the floor rushing up to meet me, heard the scrape of the chair, felt the way the room went cold. Still, beneath all that fear, something else lived now, resolve. They thought age made me weak. They forgot something important. I survived grief. I survived struggle. I survived raising a child alone when the world wasn't built to help women like me, and I was still standing. By morning, the law would speak for me. And when it did, it wouldn't whisper. Morning came slow. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out, listening to a house that wasn't mine breathe around me. Evelyn's place smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner, normal smells. Safe smells. My phone rang at 8:12 am. That sound, I'd learn later, is what protection sounds like. The lawyer didn't waste time. His voice was sharp but calm, like a man who knew exactly where every lever was. The emergency order went through, he said. Your son and his wife are being served right now. I sat down hard. What does that mean? I asked. It means they are legally barred from contacting you. They can't come near you. They can't touch the house. If they do, police get involved. For the first time since the fall, my shoulders dropped, not because the pain disappeared, but because it finally had witnesses. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed like it had a mind of its own. Messages stacked up. Missed calls, my son's name blinking back at me like a ghost that refused to stay buried. I didn't answer. The lawyer told me not to. Every message is evidence, he said. Let them talk. And they did. Panic sounds different when it's written, less powerful, more desperate. By noon, a uniformed officer knocked on Evelyn's door, not to scare me, but to check on me. To make sure I was safe, she looked me in the eye and said, "What happened to you was wrong." I believed her, and that belief, it stitched something back together inside me. Court came quicker than I expected. Small room, wooden benches, cold air. My son sat on one side, I sat on the other. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, emotionally. Like the weight of consequence had finally found him. His wife didn't look at me. Good, I didn't need her eyes on me anymore. The judge spoke plainly, no drama, just facts, evidence, witnesses. My bruises told a story no one could rewrite. The order became permanent. The house, my house, was frozen in my name. Nobody could sell it, touch it, claim it. When the gavel came down, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy, release. Outside the courtroom, my son tried to step toward me. An officer stopped him before he could speak. And that was the moment I understood something heavy and freeing all at once. Love does not excuse harm, and blood does not cancel accountability. I walked out into the sunlight with my head high. I wasn't leaving as a victim. I was leaving as a woman who chose herself. And somewhere between the courthouse steps and the open sky, I realized this story wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about what I was going to build next. People think the hardest part is the courtroom. It's not. The hardest part comes after, when everything goes quiet and you're left alone with the truth. I stayed with Evelyn longer than I planned, not because I had to. Because I needed to remember who I was without defending myself every second. We cooked simple meals, watched old game shows, sat on the porch in the evenings while the sky turned that soft purple I've always loved. But inside me, something restless paced back and forth. I wasn't just angry, I was awake. Every phone call the lawyer took from someone like me, every story he shared in passing lit something in my chest. Women pushed out of their homes. Men tricked into signing papers they didn't understand. Folks silenced because they didn't want to cause trouble. I started asking questions. What happens to people who don't have a friend like Evelyn? What about folks who don't know to call a lawyer? How many of us just disappear quietly? The answers sat heavy. One afternoon, I said it out loud without planning to. I don't want this to end with me. Evelyn looked up from shelling peas. Then don't let it. That night, I wrote notes on scrap paper, ideas, names, resources. I didn't know what it would turn into yet, only that my pain was asking to be useful. The fall didn't break me, it pointed me somewhere. The first meeting was small. 6 folding chairs in the back room of a community center. Bad coffee. A box of store-bought cookies. No flyers, no speeches, just people. An older man whose daughter had borrowed his savings. A woman who slept in her car because her grandson took her house. A quiet lady who cried without making a sound. I told my story plain, no drama, no polish, and when I finished, something shifted. They started talking, not over each other, with each other. That room filled with relief, the kind that comes when you realize you're not crazy, weak, or alone. By the end of the night, someone asked, "When's the next one?" I didn't hesitate. "Next week." I went home afterward, my home, now empty but still mine, and stood in the doorway where it all began. The same floor, same walls, different woman. I wasn't here to reclaim the past. I was here to repurpose it. And as I turned on the lights, I understood something clear as day. What they tried to take from me had multiplied. Word spreads fast when people feel seen. By the 3rd meeting, we had to add more chairs. By the 5th, we moved to a bigger room. Folks started bringing cousins, church friends, neighbors who whispered, "This happening to me too." I didn't call myself a leader, didn't want the title, I just showed up, I listened. I shared what I learned, I pointed people toward help, and the more I listened, the clearer the pattern became. It was never just about money, or houses, or paperwork. It was about control, about people thinking age meant silence. That love meant obedience, that family meant ownership. One night, a man named Clarence stayed behind after everyone left, late 70s, hands shaking just a little. "They told me I was confused," he said. "Made me feel small." I looked him dead in the eye. "You ain't confused," I said. "You been manipulated." The relief on his face almost broke me. That's when I understood this wasn't charity work, this was justice work. And justice? It don't whisper either. It had been almost 2 years since that night at the table, 2 years since my son last spoke to me. I was cooking dinner when the phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. "Miss Mayfield?" a woman asked. Her voice was gentle, professional. "Yes, my name is Dana. I'm calling from a medical facility out of state." My stomach tightened. She paused like she knew the weight of what came next. "Your son asked us to reach out." Silence filled the kitchen. "He's sick," she continued. "Very sick." I leaned against the counter. I didn't cry, didn't gasp, didn't drop the phone. I just listened. After we hung up, I stood there for a long time, staring at the steam rising from the pot like it might spell out the right answer. People think forgiveness means reunion. It doesn't. Forgiveness is something you do so the past doesn't poison the future. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter, not long, not angry, just honest. I told him I forgave him, that I hoped he found peace. That the woman he hurt had survived and built something bigger than either of us imagined. I didn't offer my address. I didn't reopen the door. Some endings don't need revisiting to be real. And when I sealed that envelope, I knew this chapter was closing, quietly on my terms. The call about my son didn't undo me. That surprised people when they found out. They expected tears, regret, a last-minute rush to fix something that had been broken for years. But grief doesn't always show up loud. Sometimes it arrives already tired, already processed. I'd mourned him before, not the man he became, but the boy he used to be. the one who loved peanut butter sandwiches and begged me to stay up during thunderstorms. That boy had been gone a long time, still I sat with the weight of it. I let myself feel sad without letting it pull me backward. A few weeks later, another call came, shorter, final. I thanked the woman on the line and hung up. Then I went to the community center, unlocked the door, and set up chairs like I always did. Life didn't stop because one chapter ended, and that right there was the lesson. The group had grown into something solid by then. We had volunteers, guest speakers, a legal clinic once a month. People came in hunched over and left standing straighter. One evening, a woman took my hands after a meeting. "You gave me my life back," she said. I shook my head gently. "No, ma'am, you took it back, I just stood nearby." That night, driving home, I realized something quiet but powerful. The thing my son and his wife tried to take from me, my voice, my place, my sense of worth, had multiplied into something that would outlive us all. That's how healing works when you don't waste it. Years passed, not dramatic ones, good ones. I laughed more, traveled some, learned how to rest without guilt. The house felt lighter once I made it mine again. New paint, moved furniture, rooms with purpose instead of ghosts. I grew older, slower but steadier. When people asked if I regretted standing my ground, my answer never changed. I regret the harm, I'd say, not the boundary. Toward the end, I spent more time on the porch. Morning light. Evening breeze, neighbors waving like they always had. One afternoon, a young woman stopped by. She'd been coming to the group quietly for months. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "Because of you, I didn't sign those papers." I smiled. That was enough. When the world finally got quiet for me, it didn't feel lonely. It felt complete, like a long exhale after holding your breath too long. If there's one thing I'd leave behind, it's this: love does not require your silence. Family does not excuse harm, and it's never too late to choose yourself. Some stories end with applause. Mine ended with peace. And honestly, that was better. Time has a way of smoothing sharp edges, not erasing them, just rounding them enough so you can hold the memory without bleeding. In my later years, people sometimes asked how I carried it all. The betrayal, the loss, the distance that never closed. They expected some secret formula. I never had one. I just stopped pretending I was supposed to be okay with what hurt me. Some mornings I woke up missing my son, not the man he became, but the child I once knew. Other mornings I felt nothing at all, and both were honest. Both were allowed. The work continued without me having to push it anymore. New leaders stepped up, younger voices, stronger systems. I watched from the side, proud but quiet, like a gardener who knows when to stop digging. People still recognized me sometimes. "You're the reason I didn't lose my house. You're the reason I stood up. You're the reason I'm still here." I always smiled and said the same thing. "No, you're the reason." Because that was the truth. I didn't save anyone, I just proved survival was possible. In the evenings, I sat by the window with my tea, watching shadows stretch across the floor that once held me at my lowest. That floor never scared me anymore. It reminded me that I fell, that I stood, that I chose myself. And that choice echoed longer than any apology ever could. In the end, there was no big moment, no dramatic goodbye, no final speech. No crowd, just quiet, the good kind. The kind that feels earned. I spent my last days surrounded by people who chose me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Friends, students, survivors. Family built from truth instead of obligation. Sometimes I thought about that night at the table, not with anger, not with regret, just clarity. If it hadn't happened, I might have lived smaller, stayed silent. Believed love meant endurance instead of dignity. That shove meant to break me became the reason I learned how unbreakable I was. And if anyone ever tells my story, I hope they don't focus on the fall. I hope they talk about what came after. The standing, the choosing, the quiet strength of a woman who refused to disappear, because in the end, that's all any of us really want: to live honestly, to leave something kinder behind. And to know that even after betrayal, we mattered, and we always did. If this story touched something in you, please take a second to like and subscribe. These stories reach people who need them because of you. And if you've ever had to choose yourself the hard way, tell us your story in the comments. You're not alone here. Let me ask you something: if you were in her place, would you have stayed silent, or would you have walked away too? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment. Thank you for listening until the end. Stories like this remind us that strength doesn't always look loud. If you believe stories can heal, please like, subscribe, and stay with us for the next one.